Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. Sean here, and I did the old haircut. I did the home haircut. It's a bit on the short side and I have this like weird cowlick right here that I'm not sure about, but it does feel better, and having long hair during the summer and working outside is the worst. So today we're going to be tackling some color grading, and specifically I'm going to be regrading an old film I did about a year ago. You might have seen it. It's the ALTAS RATTENKONIG music video. I was part of a film festival, like competition kind of thing, where we had 2 days. We got the band the first day, so we had to script and shoot and edit an entire music video in 2 days with only $500. We've done it a couple years now, and it's a lot of fun. We're actually planning to do it here pretty soon again. The problem is that you have a small crew. For me, it was like me and my buddy Jesse doing all of the filming and editing. So we're up for like 43 hours straight getting this thing done, because we got a 5.5 minute long video, whereas some of the other competitors had like a 2-minute video, which you don't have to shoot nearly as much. And we got pretty ambitious. We had dancers, we had costuming, we had full lighting rigs, and we did it all in 2 days with 2 people, which meant we didn't have a whole lot of time for the finishing aspect of the video. Like we put a bunch of time into the edit, but we didn't get to really grade it. So since I've been actually grading a few of the shots for my demo reel, it kind of inspired me to go back and regrade the entire thing and see what the film could look like in its entirety, just to see its full potential, you know, because it's cool looking, but I had to grade the whole thing in Lumetri color, and I felt like it was kind of limited, and I really only got to spend like maybe 2-3 hours total on the grading, which, I mean, honestly, I probably could have done better, but at the time I didn't really know a lot about color grading. And like, I've done a lot of things, I've moved a lot of sliders and got things looking cool in my mind, but I never knew what scopes were. I never knew how to like color correct and get shots balanced before I try to apply a look to it. So that's kind of what I want to do. It's almost like a practice session, and just to kind of like get closure on my end to see a film in its full potential. So we're going to go through a handful of the original shots, just so you guys get an idea of what this music video looks like, the different lighting scenarios, the different scene setups. And then from there, I'm going to take all the clips into Resolve and regrade them. And then I'll pull up like a few of the shots and show you more of an in-depth look at the node structure once it's all finished. So another thing I'm doing is doing this from scratch. So I did grade a few of these shots for my demo reel, but I kind of want to start at the beginning and see what else I could do with the shot. And I'm going to try to keep it as simple as possible. I tend to make these very complicated node structures because I'm trying to like manipulate every little facet of the film or of that frame. And I think I want to try to keep it more of like a cinematic thing, where keep the node structure simple so I can apply it from one shot to the next with very little rebalancing and like reconfiguring. Because once you start pulling qualifiers and start really messing with this stuff, it can get messy and can get hard to go from one shot to the other. And I've found that with my own grading, I do that quite a bit. So I'm going to try to keep it as simple as possible, unless like a shot really needs something cool. Luckily, this is a music video, so you only have a handful of shots, or I guess in this case, probably close to like 100. You know, you can spend a little bit of time per frame or per shot, rather than like a feature film where you have like over 1,000 shots, depending on the film, obviously, that you have to get through. So like for me, I can give that time needed per shot, and I think it's worth it in the end, especially when you're going for a very stylized video like this one. All right, so let's take a moment and go through the original video and see what we're looking at. So one of the things about this music video is that we actually used mostly practical lights for like the first half of the film. So this is all like fluorescent lighting with those practical lights in the background. God knows what those are, but we're trying to keep it kind of gross, kind of like unwelcoming and unflattering because of the initial feel of the music video. So we're gonna really try to play that up, really increase that kind of like urine yellow color cast. And then right here, it actually switches to another practical fluorescent light, but way more contrasty. Then we have these shots in the bathroom that are also fluorescent. So you can kind of tell, like, this is the actual grade I did. Very simple, but you can kind of tell there is kind of that yellow cast from those old bulbs. So yeah, we're really gonna try to play up the contrast in here, almost make it like silhouette-y, and then pop those highlights off the shoulders and like the back wall. And yeah, right here we have some really high-powered LEDs that we obviously are just flashing through the whole spectrum. So this section I'm going to try to keep pretty simple, because if you push it too far, it's going to start breaking the image. So we're just going to really like boost the contrast, saturation, and kind of make it pretty simple. This area actually has a lot of UV light in it on accident. The LED lights that we're using, we forgot to turn off the UV setting in one of the lights. So you can kind of tell there's kind of a glowing aspect to a lot of the colors in the flowers and their t-shirt. But again, we're probably going to keep this pretty simple, but just kind of play up the color dynamic of that red and blue. And right about here, we just went full red. So not a whole lot we can do with pushing different colors into these shots, but I'm going to try to just add a lot of drama to these shots. Because they're very monochromatic, I can really just mess with the shadows and the highlights and really dial those in. But for the most part, I'm going to keep these really simple as to not break the image, because red is kind of hard for kind of lower end cameras like mine to pick up. Plus there's UV in these as well, which also makes it hard for the camera to pick up. You can kind of see it in the small leaves there, and like on the highlights of her mask where it just looks like it's glowing. So gonna keep these easy, and excited to get into it. So let's do it. All right, well, I am quite happy with how this new grade is looking. I honestly actually redid a lot of the grading after I shot the time lapse and got a chance to look at the footage when it was all said and done. I didn't really like the skin tones in my original grade, so I actually went back, and I know I was trying to keep it complicated, or not complicated, and not do qualifiers, but the skin tone just wasn't looking how I saw it in my head. So I actually went back and did some keying out of just the skin tones to make those look as good as I could. So I'm going to go through and take a few shots that I thought were my favorite kind of hero shots from each of the three locations, that being like the front break room, the like kind of dark silhouetted dancing shots, and then the red room shot. And I'll kind of go through each of them and show you how I got the look. All right, so first up is this shot, and this is actually the shot that I used as my hero shot that I graded everything else based off of. I still kept it relatively simple compared to some of my other grades. I'm gonna go ahead and show you the before here. So this is what it looked like before. So not like a huge change, but it's pretty drastic, and I tried to keep it as filmic as I could. This first node is just noise reduction, just to help with the key that I ended up pulling to get her skin tones. This first one is just the balance of the exposure and contrast. So it doesn't look that great, but it gets things kind of in the ballpark. Ended up doing quite a bit of contrast because I wanted it to kind of feel grungy, and I didn't really care if the blacks kind of went off the bottom of the scopes. You can see my scopes over here. So I'm still within the like legal. I'm not quite blowing them out. It got right there out the bottom though. But yeah, I wanted to make it really contrasty. And so then this next node is the balance to get all the whites looking white and the black points looking black. Next node is saturation. Now this helps with pulling keys and really showing the difference in color. So we have this really nice blue backdrop with the nice orange skin tones, which I really like that contrast, and it's just a natural blue and orange look. And then, so this whole section here is actually a layer mixer. So what I did was actually desaturated this upper node quite a bit. It's actually at just under 30 for saturation. And then I did a soft light layer mixer. So you can go right click, composite mode, and pick however you want this to composite. You can see what it does for each of these, which is kind of nice. You don't have to click through each one to see what it did. And I ended up liking soft light the most, so that's what I picked. And then this one is actually just the key. So if you go up here to just the highlight, you can see how I keyed it. I even got a little bit of Emma in the background here, which I wasn't too worried about her, but I figured might as well get her in there too if I could. And so I got my vector scope out and made sure I was pretty much on that line. I actually had to go a little less on the red side and kind of skew more yellow. And that was just because the contrast that ended up happening was really apparent, and it made her look like Oompa Loompa style red. She's still kind of a little bit orange, but I kind of fixed that with this local adjustment. So I kind of did I lifted the blacks here, and you can see in my curves, and then brought the contrast back down and then boosted the highlights. And it kind of creates that very filmic, like actual film stock look that I was kind of going for, to kind of make it feel unwelcome and like a harsh environment. So this next two nodes are my vignette. In this one, all I did was pull down the curves here just to add a little bit of darkness around her to make her pop. And then I also dropped the mid-tone detail, which is in the second page here. And that just kind of softens everything away from her and kind of makes it look like a vintage glass, like vintage lenses, which I really like that look. And then this one, all I did here was kind of boost the midtones a little bit. So you can kind of see how she ends up popping just a little bit more, and it creates a nice contrast between her and then the background. This next one, all I did was sharpen. So I just brought it down. I sharpened it quite a bit, so it's kind of unnaturally sharp on her, but then it kind of really pulls out the pores and like everything in her skin to make it look all that more unpleasant. And then finally, in this last one is just grain. If you really zoom in here, you can see how much grain I added. And that's, again, just to make it look more filmic and kind of break up and soften some of the keys. Because sometimes you can kind of see the edge of keys, and like grain kind of helps to break that up. So overall, still not that involved. I use mostly just primaries to get my look. And then this is where most of it happened in the layer mixer. If I actually take these off, you can kind of see what it would look like without that. It's very punchy, like it's still kind of a cool look, but it's way too saturated. So that soft light mix kind of just brings everything down and makes it look like the grunginess that I was going for. All right, the next shot that was my hero shot for the next section was this shot. This is actually my girlfriend. And on this shoot is the shoot that we ended up kind of falling in love on. We got to know each other really well over the course of the weekend, and I ended up asking her out, and the rest was history. And we've been together ever since, going on like a year and a half now. So this video actually has a lot of sentimental value to me because I got to meet my girlfriend. Now this is the before. So this first node is for noise reduction. I actually ended up not using any noise reduction for this one. I didn't really find it necessary, and I didn't really want to bog down my system if I didn't have to. First one again is just my exposure and contrast, trying to get that looking good. And you can see in my scopes here that like this is my highlight. So this is like her right here. And then the mids is just this bit. And I really didn't want to push it. I think I kind of underexposed this shot when I shot it originally. So if I increase this anymore, the image started just kind of breaking down. And honestly, it didn't really need to be pushed much further than this. So I kept it really dark because I knew I wanted her mostly silhouetted and just the edges of her and then everybody else in the other clips. This is the balance. So I got everything looking nice and white, like her t-shirt is white. I actually looked at outlet cover here because I knew that was white too and got everything pretty well balanced. You can tell by my parade here scopes. And then this was my saturation. Didn't really boost the saturation all that much, just a little bit to bring some color in because I wanted this mostly to be like a stark, almost black and white. Again, I used the layer mixer here. This bottom one is actually the skin tones still, but because she's mostly silhouetted, it doesn't actually come into play very often. But you can kind of see right in here, whenever the skin does come in play, I have it kind of desaturated so it's not like really popping out. And that's all that's doing. I guess it's her hair mostly. So nothing too much. I kind of wanted to keep it pretty simple on this one because I didn't want the image to look terrible. Again, this is kind of my adjustment. So I did the same kind of curve, very much more subtle this time. Just barely lifted the shadows because the image is mostly shadow. If you raise this up any more, it just gets real dingy, which still looks good, but I wanted to kind of like be able to see her dancing and not take away from that. So that's basically all I did there. The only other thing I did was kind of take down the color boost to get rid of a little bit of the saturation, because again, I was kind of almost going for a black and white. But you kind of see a little bit of blue in the carpet here, and then this little paint strip that you can see here is kind of a blue. And so I kind of liked the fact that this is like orangey yellow and her skin tones kind of play off of that. So I wanted to keep that, but not quite have a lot of color in these shots. These next two are this next one is my vignette, which I always add in. Just adds a nice extra roundness to it, and you can kind of see what I did with it. Just wanted to really put the focus on her. And again, here all I did was pull this down to darken it around her. And I think that's all I did on this one. Just a basic vignette. And then as always, this last one is my grain. And I added a lot of grain to this one. You can really see it. I wanted it to be really dirty and grungy because I don't know, just how I was feeling at the moment. All right, and this last shot, actually probably one of my favorite shots of the entire music video. Just really liked the weird, awkward framing that I got on it when I originally shot it. And I actually was able to keep this one really simple. This is actually just noise reduction, so I could get rid of that, not a problem. I got to keep it simple because there's really not a lot to work with because it's mostly red. So all I really did was go through and, get my contrast and exposure like I always do right off the bat. This one I kind of messed with the curves a little bit, brought up the shadows a little bit so you get those kind of faded shadows, and then messed with the reds a little bit just to kind of boost them to get that look. And then pulled down the saturation a little bit because it was quite red and I didn't want it to be like overwhelming and start to break the image down. So yeah, very simple on that note. This one is actually just my vignette. Actually, these next two are my vignette and then my boost like I did the last time. So this second one here is just a little bit of a highlight boost, and that's reflected in this. You just see a little bit of a push, not too much because you don't want to break the image, but just enough to punch it out. And then I also included a sharpening, just a little bit. So wherever I put that middle vignette, pretty much every time on her, the monster, she was a little more in focus because honestly, I was on 43 hours, or probably closer to 40 hours of not sleeping and trying to shoot this whole sequence and then go home and edit it. So I missed my focus a little bit. So I wanted to get it kind of sharpened as much as I could. And then, yeah, this is just kind of a global adjust. Just kind of brought everything down in my loom versus sat I wanted to get the shadows kind of a little more on the black side. And I think I actually put a little bit of blue. Yeah, I put a little bit of blue on this first node into my log, and then I used my low range to kind of dial in where I want it to affect. But this was just to kind of bring down some of that blue tone, because without it, it kind of was a little too much for me in the shadows. So this kind of desaturates it and just kind of brings it into kind of a cool kind of muted feel. And finally, this was another vignette. I just wanted a really heavy black off to the side because I felt like it looked cool. So all I did was kind of pull down my curves quite a bit in the shadow range and got that look. So I was able to keep it pretty simple. Only 6 nodes, didn't really layer anything, and got that look. So before, which is pretty much what it looks like in the original video, and then after, quite a bit of a difference, and kept it pretty simple. So that's going to do it for this episode. Had a bunch of fun doing this. Hopefully it gave you guys kind of an idea of how I grade and how to grade a music video along these lines. Very grungy, very dark and ominous. If you wanted to see the full music video, go ahead and check out ALTAS. Their actual YouTube channel has the original version from the competition if you wanted to see that in its full. And then I'm going to post the regraded version to my channel so you can kind of see the thing in its entirety. I didn't want to put it at the end of this video because it's already been a little bit longer than I was planning. But hopefully you like it. And if you do, you know, leave a like and subscribe, all that good stuff. And we will see you next time.